Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Sacramento Summer Music Virtual Concert Series. Oops. My name is Lisa Lawson, and I am Music Director of Sacramento Baroque Soloists, which, along with the Vida Academy's Great Composers Chamber Music Series and the Sacramento Guitar Society, is bringing you this series of concerts. With me is my husband, Michael Lawson, who is our artistic director and continuo cellist and co-founded the group with me in 2001. We at Sacramento Baroque Soloists are beginning our 19th season this year. At this time, we would usually be gearing up for our season. And we're planning something of a season this year, but we're leaving things a little more up in the air, and we'll be announcing concerts closer to their presentation. Although we're not able to perform at Harris Center this year, we are grateful for our continuing relationship with St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Sacramento, where we filmed tonight's concert. I'm very happy to include all of our performers for this program in our conversation this evening. We'll be sharing a little bit about the performances and hopefully answer a few of your questions. So please do use the chat feed for your comments and questions, and we will do our best to keep an eye on this. Also, you will find information about the program, including program notes and performer bios on our website, which you can find linked in the concert description or at sacramentobaroque.org. I would like to extend our deepest gratitude to our many supporters and volunteers whose contributions make our concerts possible. If you enjoy this concert, please consider making a donation to Sacramento Baroque Soloists using the link in the description box below. I hope you'll also join us for our concluding concert of this weekend's series tomorrow at 2 p.m., featuring the young rising stars of the Vida Academy's Great Composers Chamber Music Series. Thank you for your support and enjoy the program. now Laura Rubinstein-Salzedo, Naomi Rogers-Hefley, and Shannon Houston, whom you just heard perform Telemann's Concerto for 4 Violins in D major. Welcome, and thanks for joining us tonight. Whom you just heard perform Telemann's Concerto for 4 Violins. So I wondered, would you like to share with us how it felt to perform this way for a virtual recording rather than a live concert?
I would.
Oh.
Yeah, it was very wonderful, first of all, just to have the opportunity to be in the same room with all you lovely people and to play some music together. That was amazing. And it was a strange kind of a dichotomy between feeling distance, because we had to be 6 feet or further apart. So Shannon and I, or Laura and I, couldn't share a stand the way we normally would. So from that point of view, it was a bit odd. But on the other hand, we were facing each other in a circle, so it felt very intimate. It was just wonderful.
I second Naomi. It was lovely to play music together with people. I've done a lot of recordings virtually over the last few months, so I would record a part, and then the harpsichordist would record a part, and then you put it together. But it's just not the same if you're not playing at the same moment and, feeding off of each other. It has its benefits, like you get to redo it if you aren't happy, but also you have to keep redoing it, which is hard.
Really hard.
And having an audience is so beneficial. You get to see how people react, and it feeds you and it feeds them, and it's this like dance. And so without an audience, it's weird for sure, but still wonderful to be able to play music with people.
And Shannon, he's been with us just for a couple of years now, and we're so glad to have him joining us. Shannon, we are especially interested for you to share not only how you felt recording this project, but also about your project serving underserved youth. Could you share with us a little bit about that?
Absolutely, I'd be very happy to. So first, with the performance that we did, it was very interesting having to work in a way that we were very separate. But one thing that I extremely appreciated was that we got to actually feel music with other people, which for us we haven't had in quite some time. And so I remember from the very first note that we played when we were together, I was instantly smiling because it had been months and months since I had actually had that feeling of harmony with others. And so it was very, very, very pleasant. For what I'm doing here. So currently I live in Berkeley, and I started teaching here. I teach in the school district here and started teaching here several years ago, and I wanted to find my way into a youth symphony. But what I noticed when I started looking around was that I noticed that there was a lack of students of color, and being a person of color myself and a musician of color, this is something that's very important to me to a youth symphony. And so I decided to start my own youth symphony. It's called the New Apollo Youth String Orchestra. And my goal with it being is to give the students of colors here locally a stepping stone into youth symphony, a place to come into that it doesn't matter if they have the money to or not to be able to come in. It doesn't matter if they've had the same musical experience or not as the people around them, but it gives them the opportunity to come in and have a musical experience just like those in the traditional setting. And so I'm very happy to say that we're going to be starting outdoor rehearsals in several weeks there. That's something that just came up. We were looking into. We weren't going to be able to start, but then I've been given permission by the city to go ahead. That will happen.
For your orchestra in the chat feed, then maybe people who are still interested in finding out more about the New Apollo New Apollo Orchestra, can find out more about what you're doing there.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I don't know if you knew this, but Antonio Vivaldi wrote over 500 concertos, many of which were for his all-female orchestra of the Ospedale della Pietà, which was a home for abandoned children. 230 of these concertos were written for violin soloists, but an amazing 39 concertos were written for bassoon. Our soloist in this Vivaldi bassoon concerto is David Wells, who's here with us tonight. David, the Baroque bassoon has such a beautiful sound. Could you share with us a little about your instrument?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So my bassoon is a copy of an instrument from about 1720. The original was made in Germany. It has many fewer keys than the modern bassoon, as well as having lots of internal differences. The bore characteristics, which give it a very different sound, are also very, very distinct. I'll see if I can get it all in the Zoom window here. Probably got a better view in the YouTube video, but I've got one key here, two down here for my right hand, and on the back, two more here. So 5 keys altogether. And we can compare that with my modern bassoon, which I won't even bother to count, but you can just sort of see all the metal all over it. And interestingly, all of the mechanisms on here don't necessarily make this easier to play. They make certainly more recent music easier to play, but I just before we started tonight got this out and played the same movement that you just heard on the modern bassoon, and it takes a lot more work and effort to operate all of this metal. So newer is not necessarily better.
Telemann was also a very prolific composer. He was very well respected throughout Europe and was actually offered the Kapellmeister job at Leipzig before Johann Sebastian Bach, who was actually the town's third choice. Telemann's music is very accessible and included elements of French, German, and Italian styles. This quartet is not really a concerto in the usual sense, but it features 4 solo instruments. The treble instrument is the Traverso. So I have with us Cathie Apple, who I hope will help us understand the unique characteristics of her different flutes.
Absolutely. So this is kind of a fun opportunity because usually when I'm performing with Sacramento Baroque soloists, I only have my Traverso, but here in my own home studio, of course, I've got my modern flute with me, so I can do a little side-by-side comparison. And you can see there are some pretty obvious differences between the two. Most material, silver, wood, and then just like the difference between the modern and Baroque bassoon that Dave showed you, I have one little key on my Traverso and many, many keys on the modern. But aside from that, the big difference is in the sound. So I'm just going to play just a little short excerpt so you can hear the two instruments side by side. So here's the modern flute. And the Traverso. Now, don't be too distracted by the fact that the Traverso is going to sound very low. It's a half step below the modern flute.
No internet.
Make sure you're not on the internet.
Different, but so beautiful.
You may or may not know that Baroque music actually has a lot in common with jazz. Not only is improvisation encouraged, but also there's a rhythm section, and this is called the continuo. Ryan Enright, our harpsichord and organist for this concert, is here with us tonight, as well as Michael Lawson, who's our continuo cellist. And I'm hoping you both will tell us a bit about the continuo.
Well, my part was not improvised, but Follia would have often been an improvised piece during this time. It was, as you can tell, it's a ground bass, repeating chord progression that builds on itself. And just like our modern music today, we have lots of music with the same chord progression that repeats over and over again. Ryan's part, however, is improvised, and I particularly enjoyed performing this piece because while we're playing and I'm focusing on my precise notes, the cello sometimes has important things and other times it's just doing harmonic support. I'm listening to Ryan come up with things on the keyboard that are new to my ears, so maybe he can tell you a bit about improvising, creating the continuo part.
Hi, can you hear me pretty well?
Yeah.
We can.
Wonderful. So Michael and I have a very special role, and that is the continuo section, which Lisa described very well in comparing it to our 20th century jazz orchestra, jazz ensembles. Basically, the continuo can be described as a bass line, and actually in the Baroque period, the continuo player didn't know what the treble instruments were doing often. All they would have in front of them was a bass line, and actually, can you see this? And with numerical figures on top. And it's very mathematical, very precise. So you see the number 4, perhaps, and then 3. That means that you're playing the interval, a chord, a dissonance, actually, because the 4th is a dissonance in Baroque music and pre-20th century music. And you would have to basically play a chord with a 4th in it, and then resolve it to the 3rd. And then you see 4-2 in the next bar, and 6. These are all inversions of major chords or minor chords or dissonant chords, where the bass note of the chord is not necessarily the root of the chord is not necessarily in the pitch that you see. The continuo player actually has to be quite educated in theory and has to it makes sense mathematically, sure, but you have to know the whole harmonic context. So you really should know what the other instruments are doing. But one of the most wonderful parts about continuo playing is that you don't always need to play the same measure of music the same way. Let's say that the instrumentalists are above you or have a thinner texture. Maybe you don't want to play with 4 voices or 6 voices, because continuo players can play with full hands. Maybe you want to have 2 notes above the bass line for a total of 3 notes. Maybe it's going to be in the middle register of the keyboard. Maybe it's going to be in the treble. If you're going to play in the treble, it's good that the treble instruments. When I mean treble, I mean above middle C, up until we're talking about this area. If the treble instruments are higher up in the range, then by all means, the continuo player, the continuo player could be a lute player, a lutenist, cellist, viola da gambist, organist, harpsichordist, and what else? Guitar. So you can have large continuo ensembles that are a force of their own, in, like, say, the operas of Monteverdi. Anyhow, the continuo did develop probably sometime in the 16th century, very early on. The opera by Jacopo da Peri, I think it's Ulysses, which was produced in Florence. This is the first time we see a bass line with figures on top of it. So at this point, the idea of the continuo texture and the harmony having its own meaning below the other instruments, the treble instruments, violin, oboe, cornetti, an old instrument, all sorts of stuff, starts to have its own significance, and continuo playing becomes an art. And most Baroque keyboardists were all good at continuo playing. In fact, Bach's continuo parts are feverishly difficult, fiendishly difficult. You see stuff like 7-5-2, sharp 9-5-2, and you look at it, and you're just sort of scratching your head. What does this mean? And you have to look at the other parts. And it's really an intellectual endeavor part of the time. So it takes a lot to play the continuo. I just want to say that, and I'm really glad that I had years and years of training at McGill University and the Eastman School of Music, playing in early music ensembles, playing the harpsichord and the organ. And when I'm watching Michael, I'm sort of trying to look at the dynamic and the sort of the way he's attacking a pitch and what he's doing in his part. But and also I'm always listening to the ensemble to bounce off of an important moment in the piece. There might be a moment of great gravitas. There might be a moment of great drama, a moment of color. And I want to somehow bring that out with the way I sweep a chord. And it could be a huge chord that takes a long time, like a huge arpeggio all the way up the harpsichord. And the harpsichord has a different way of playing than the organ. You can often just play the chord squarely, sort of a hard attack where you're just playing all the notes at the same time, or you can roll the chord, but you don't have to roll it always from the top. You can roll it from the bottom. You don't always have to roll it from the bottom. You can roll it from the top. Anyway, it's a very subtle art, and I would say that continuo playing has pushed my sense of creativity as a musician. And when you hear a work like the Vivaldi, La Follia, the chord progression is actually quite traditional for Vivaldi, who is known for enjoying flamboyant, audacious harmonies. And it was a challenge to me to play it because my actual harmonies are quite straightforward, and so I had to play off the different instrumentalists and find creativity in sort of really building off of what each instrument or group of instruments was doing from movement to movement.
Sit nomen
This beautiful aria for soprano was written by Vivaldi as a Vesper psalm. When we recorded this a few weeks ago, we had to do it a few times because of the motorcycles driving by. So when we finished this, though, this time, there was this transcendent hush. And Robin Fisher is here with us tonight. And I wanted to ask you, Robin, what was it like for you to sing this song right now at this time?
Well, it was magical. Vivaldi chose an incredibly reduced accompaniment for this aria, which was the style up to 1720. And this beautiful Laudate Pueri was published in 17. At that time, people still loved to hear that absolute minimal accompaniment. And so you hear the playing of the eighth notes with just one instrument, and it's layered by a second and layered by a third. And then the singer gets to join in this ethereal, beautiful underlay that is timeless. And I felt that it was so perfect for what we're experiencing right now, where time seems to stand still. Of course, the motorcycle went by, but you still had this magical experience of being in downtown Sacramento in beautiful St. Paul's Episcopal Church, and time stood still for us. I felt that about the whole concert tonight, that it was just in a cocoon of beautiful music, beautiful Baroque timelessness. The words of the text also are, "Blessed is the name of the Lord, both now and evermore, for ages and ages." And we are experiencing that in 2020. The feeling of timelessness. Will we ever be back to the life we knew? Will we ever forget 2020? And Vivaldi really gave us a moment there to just pause and experience the beauty of his compositional style. The harmony elevates, it's so subtle, and yet there's this gorgeous tension that happens. Blessed is the name of the Lord, now and forever. And I really appreciated the opportunity to sing this aria with you, Lisa, and Laura, and Naomi. I thought we just really experienced something special.
Thank you. This Corelli concerto was our largest piece on tonight's program. We had 3 concertino parts, which are the solos, played by myself and Laura and Michael, and ripieno parts played by Naomi and Shannon and Kim. And then Ryan covered the continuo. So Concerti Grossi are the forerunner of the later concerto in which the soloist plays against the orchestra. Now, our violist, Kim LaSavio, is here with us now, and I've asked her to share with us a little bit about her viola.
Well, I'm very happy to share about the viola, my favorite instrument. You may have noticed that I didn't play in every piece. The viola, this is a viola. The string instruments, of course, come in a family, just like singers, of soprano, alto, tenor, and bass. And the viola is the tenor member. It wasn't always used in Baroque music. And often the instruments at that time were very large. The violas were true tenor instruments and were quite large and were even played on the knee or between the legs. So part of the problem we have as early music violists is that there aren't many of these instruments left from that time because they were so large that they were very difficult for modern players to play on their shoulder. So it's very advantageous for us that we have modern luthiers, viola and violin makers and cello makers who are making modern reproductions of Baroque instruments. So my instrument is the baby of our group. It was made by a local luthier named Devin Huff for me, and I'm very honored to play it. It's patterned after a viola made by Andrea Graneri, and he used that viola to model this instrument. So you can understand the problem that we have in that in Guarneri's instruments that still remain, there's about 250, only 7 of them are violas. So it's very hard for us as violists to find good instruments from that era compared to the violinists and cellists. So this instrument, I think, is a work of art. You can see the inlay and the time that Devin put into making it for me. I also have a Baroque bow, also made by Devin Huff. And this is made from snake wood. Modern bows are generally made from Pernambuco or Brazil wood. And again, Devin made this a little bit special for me. He used California manzanita wood in the frog part. He also used that same material in the pegs on my viola. So it's has a little California connection. And I just love it very much. It is a new instrument, so it's still breaking in, but I'm very honored to play it and play it in this group.
Thank you so much for sharing about your instrument, Kim. Some of our instruments are much older and actually are from the Baroque era, from the 1700s. And some, like Kim's, are modern reproductions. And I think that you can expect that from the wind instruments, which of course have much more humidity and moisture going through them at all times. So we're going to take a few minutes now if you would like to ask any other questions in the chat. The YouTube feed is just a little bit behind, but we do have it here, and you can see that many of our players are very actively participating in the chat. So go ahead and type in your questions if you have any, and then the players, you can go ahead and open up your video again if you're still with us. And even your audio, if we can just all hang out and be quiet. You see something, that's a beautiful fingerboard, it sure is. Do we have any chats, any questions from our audience? Wonderful time to be interactive here. Not so, I don't see things coming in, but anyway, so we are so grateful for our players. We try to hire people from this area. All of our performers are professional performers and specially trained in performing Baroque music. It is, although all modern players do play Baroque music, there's quite a bit of difference when you learn to play on the actual instruments that people used at the time. Playing the instrument itself educates us in how to shape the phrasing and how to play the music with gut strings and bows. Michael, do you have anything to add? Oh, there are some questions.
Did people dance to this music? Well, that's a pretty good question.
Oh, yeah. Would you like to answer it, Ryan?
Well, maybe I actually don't know the answer to the question with our particular music in mind, whether people dance to it, but it could be quite, like, for example, I would wonder if people would dance to the Corelli. However, the variations on La Follia by Vivaldi, I would think would be premium dance music, and that people might even have a couple drinks. And you know, this music was very, that type of ground bass was very enchanting. Even some say erotic.
Yeah.
We don't need to go there, okay? I don't know, but just putting that out there.
Only if you play it correctly.
If you play it correctly.
If you play it correctly.
I could add that, especially in Bach's music, I'm thinking of the suites for cello, that even the movements are named after dance movements, like a gavotte or a sarabande. Those are all dance types, and so dance and music at this era did definitely go together. We were the big bands of the Baroque.
Thank you. And it says here, okay, so someone was asking about the next concert. We are planning on producing a concert for Christmas time at our usual first week of the year. Whether we'll be able to do that live and socially distanced, we'll just have to see. I think our best chance at doing that would be at St. Paul's Episcopal Church, as we have heard from Harris Center that they're going to be closed through this season. Originally, they had said at least through December, but then our news was that they would be closed through until next summer. So, but if we can, we'll do it live. And we also plan to do another recorded concert. Even if we do it live, we'll take the time to do another session like this so that all of you who can't experience it live because you need to stay and seclude yourself, you'll still be able to experience it online, just like this. So that would be fun. And then we also are planning on doing one probably in the spring.
Sorry, Lisa. There's an interesting question here from Nancy asking if it was different to conduct with everyone so far apart. I thought that was an interesting question because the way we communicate, there is never a conductor of any kind, and it's always us looking at each other and moving together and breathing together. So actually, it didn't feel that different at all to me because we always do that anyway.
You know, I think, and what you said, Naomi, about being so intimately connected because we were in a circle was really true. I felt like even though we were so far apart, because we were facing each other more than usual, we did feel quite connected. And the acoustics, we were in the center of the hall at St. Paul's instead of, they're not quite as good at the end. So in the center, we could really hear all of the reflections coming back. And speaking to, there was a question right at the beginning, how do you decide as a group which pieces to play? We have to decide our season quite early because Harris Center needs it for their publicity, usually about February or March. And so we were already deciding next season before we canceled our last concert. And I usually send out an email asking the players for ideas, you know, what they might want to play for solos or ideas for programs. And then Michael and I discuss quite a bit together and come up with the concerts for the season. So everyone's involved, but we ultimately make the final decisions. Let's see if there's any.
There was a question about Vivaldi's works for solo voice. I'm glad to answer. So the question is, did he write any songs for solo voice? And Dave Wells, please chime in anytime as the music historian of note here. But Vivaldi was a priest, a Catholic priest, and his devotion was to sacred music mostly. When it came to the voice, he wrote what we would call oratorios based on biblical texts. For example, the piece I sang tonight was from an oratorio of the Psalm 113 in the Protestant Bible, Psalm 112 in the Catholic Bible. And so anything for solo voice would have been called an aria. He did write some secular pieces for voice and continuo and obligato instruments. Very few. I'd say, David, help me out, but I think just a handful to Italian or Latin texts. So he was not known for that. And I don't think he really wanted to be, again, as a man of the cloth, he really wanted to be known for his attachment to church and sacred music.
Well, I will jump in for just a second. We've kind of forgotten about a whole other part of Vivaldi's career. He wrote more than 40 operas, which hardly ever get performed today. And we don't have all of them. Various bits of them have been lost. Or even sometimes we have Act 1, but not Act 2, but we have Act 3, something like that. But he wrote a ton of music for the stage in that way too. But, you know, much of Vivaldi's music was sort of forgotten about after he died and only remembered with the discovery of two big caches of scores in the early 20th century. So we sort of know about the few things that got published, which were, I think, all instrumental music, or nearly all, and the things that Bach cared to transcribe, and the other things that made it as footnotes in theory texts and things like that. But there's all this other music that in some ways we're still kind of rediscovering at this point, like his operas.
Right. And there are opera arias that are, like David's pointing out, fragments. So they're for voice and string orchestra or limited orchestra. Yeah.
Thank you for elucidating on that. We had a question about harpsichord. And I'd asked Michael to answer the question about our harpsichord for this concert.
Well, we are very fortunate to have just received the harpsichord you heard tonight as a donation from Dale Firstad. Dale was a professor of trumpet and conducted band ensembles at University of the Pacific. And he built the harpsichord himself, and he was moving, and it was time for him to move it on. And we were so grateful to receive this instrument. It's very beautiful. And harpsichords are rare, but there are also quite a few out there. They're just sort of out in the woodwork places here and there. And we do have to transport the harpsichord to the church and back to where it stays in our studio every time we have a concert. Dale's harpsichord is very heavy. He did a really good job building it, and it's a little bit of a chore to move, and it's a very beautiful instrument. So the organ that we're using is a new instrument from England, and it's actually behind me. And that instrument maybe is a little more rare. We weren't able to find one. We had to buy one brand new. And it gives the keyboardist options to create a sustained sound, or maybe more of a rhythmic, the rhythmic energy of the harpsichord. So usually organs are big installed instruments in a church, but that one is called a portative organ, or a portable organ. I hope that answers the keyboard questions.
And we've actually been very grateful to have received donated 2 other harpsichords to Sacramento Baroque Soloists, and we also had one that belonged to us that we had restored. So we have our choice, and this happened to be the very heaviest of them, but very beautiful sounding, and we were glad to use it in tonight's concert.
And Michael and Lisa and Cameron always get a good workout in preparation for the concerts, because they're not just playing their instruments, they're lugging around instruments I and Faith often play. And so, we get to show up and, rock out here, but there's some pretty significant weightlifting that goes on to run a Baroque ensemble like this. So thank you guys for providing the Porsche, the Porsches that Faith and I get to play upon.
Okay, I think we're going to wrap it up here, and thank you all. We're so grateful to have these players in this area. Sacramento is so close to the Bay Area, where there are so many wonderful Baroque players, and sometimes we do bring them in. Ondine Young has been a longtime player for us, and Shannon Houston, of course, lives in Berkeley, and Laura lives in Walnut Creek. And so but some of them, like Laura, went to school at Sac State, and so did Shannon. So they have connections in the area. And so, but we do really try to pull together the professionals who are living here, who can create such great Baroque music. We are so glad you could join us for tonight's concert and for the Sacramento Summer Music Virtual Festival. And I hope to see you again tomorrow at 2 p.m. for our concluding Sacramento Summer Music Festival concert, featuring the young rising stars of the Vita Academy's Great Composers Chamber Music Series. These are some fabulous kids. I think you would really enjoy hearing them, hearing what Susan Lamb Cook is doing with them in her programs. If you would please consider making a donation to Sacramento Baroque Soloists using the link in the YouTube description box, or by going to our website, which is sacramentobaroque.org. That will help to support this and upcoming virtual events. We were fortunate to have some money in the bank from last season, and this concert cost between $5,000 and $6,000 to produce, because we do pay our professional players and with all the tech. And so if you would like to continue to hear these virtual concerts and live concerts, we do need your support by donation. And if you do miss any of these concerts or would like to view them again, the concert links will remain live after the festival. I know that there was some challenges with some glitching, And also on this channel on YouTube, we are going to have re-edited versions of these programs where we still have all the talking, but the performances will be put in with just from the file, so that you don't have those glitches. So you're welcome to go back and listen to those anytime, share them with your friends. We want to get these out there as much as possible. And you can also find us and more performances at sacramentobaroque.org, including our performances from home that we did in the spring. And we have a short documentary that we made in April that tells a little bit more about our experience in quarantine, and also our just the history of our organization and what we do. Please do sign up for our email list, and I invite you to subscribe to our own YouTube channel as well. Thank you so much for joining us for this evening's performance, and good night.